Lesson 2. Western alchemy may be traced to the days when Alexandria was a meeting place for that group of members of the inner school who later transferred their activities to Fez, and from the latter city issued the earliest versions of Tarot. Alchemical philosophy is tinged with ideas brought to Alexandria by wandering teachers from India, Persia, and China. This accounts for the mixture of Hindu thought, Egyptian magic, and Greek philosophy, in the Hermetic teaching veiled by the symbolism of alchemy and tarot. Besides this, there is the unmistakable influence of Hebrew esoteric tradition. This is mentioned by Zosimus, one of the early Greek alchemists, who say, "There are two sciences and two wisdoms, one of the Egyptian and one of the Hebrews, the latter being rendered more solid by divine justice. Science and wisdom are the best rule over lower sciences and inferior wisdoms. They come down from remote ages. Their generation seeks nothing from material and corruptible bodies. It operates apart from foreign intervention, sustained by prayer and grace." Yet the writings of Zosimus and other alchemists of this period abound in recipes for making the baser metals appear to be gold and silver. These recipes are the same as those in the Leiden Papyrus, which is a perfectly frank account of various devices for giving a false appearance of gold and silver to such metals as lead, copper, and tin. From this, the French writer Berthelot argues that alchemy began as a fraud, and somehow the alchemists departed from this straightforward, if somewhat dishonest beginning, and began to dream of transmutation and philosophize upon it. Dr. White appears to embrace this view, perhaps with some reserves. The truth is this: the sages do not lie, but often they do give recipes for the sort of false tinkering we have described. He who tries out the recipes will get results of a sort, but not of the sort which is the true concern of the great work. In alchemical books of the earlier period, the sophistications of the false thinkers were the blinds for the true work. He who knows how to read the books knows how to separate the subtle from the gross, the wheat of wisdom from the chaff of chemical recipes. Zosimus puts us on the track of the means to effect this separation when he speaks of the superiority of the Hebrew wisdom. Long after him came Paracelsus, who wrote, "If you do not understand the use of the Kabbalists and the old astronomers, you are not born by God for the spagyric art, or chosen by nature for the work of Vulcan, or created to open your mouth concerning alchemical arts." These words from the second chapter of his Tincture of the Philosophers make it perfectly clear that, from the very beginning of Western alchemy to the day of one of its greatest European adepts, the tradition was continued that the esoteric doctrine of Israel includes the most important keys to the secret of the great art. Yet there is only one treatise on alchemy which is definitely part of Kabbalistic literature. This is a diffused, confused volume, not altogether without merit, but by no means one of the more important alchemical texts. It is named Es Metzaref, or Cleansing Fire, and consists of fragments scattered through the first volume of Nor von Rosenroth, Kabbalah Denudata. In 1714, these were collected and translated into English by an unknown student who called himself the lover of Philaletes. It was reprinted with preface, notes, and explanations by Saper Ott, Dr. W. Wynne Westcott, in 1894. If we consider what Paracelsus means by the use of the Kabbalists, we shall have little difficulty in understanding why there are so few Kabbalistic treatises on alchemy. The Holy Kabbalah is a method for discovering the hidden spiritual meaning of the Bible. The subject matter of the Kabbalah is primarily the secret doctrine behind the letter of the Pentateuch. Hence, the use of the Kabbalists is the method whereby the inner significance of the scriptures of Israel is revealed. This method is based on correlations between numbers, letters, and words. Dr. Waite and many others dismiss this number-letter system called gematria as being of no real value. The fact remains that the mystical theses of the Kabbalah are developments of material worked out from the text of the Hebrew scriptures by gematria, notarikon, and other procedures constituting what is known as the literal Kabbalah. This is made evident from beginning to end of the Zohar, now available in an excellent English translation, published by the Soncino Press. Gematria is in disrepute because it has been abused. By perverting it, one may make any writing whatever yield any meaning one wishes to extract from it, and fanatics and charlatans have so misused the literal Kabbalah again and again. Yet the fact remains that the same methods employed with due discretion and discrimination do give us keys to the true import of many passages in the Old Testament. More than this, there is not one of the philosophical theses so admired by writers like Dr. Waite, who dismisses gematria altogether, which is not, as we have said, a development of material drawn from the Bible by this very method. It is as if one should profess admiration for gold, and at the same time declare the utter worthlessness of mining tools, when one proclaims the mystic value of Kabbalistic intuition and at the same time despises the methods by which the materials on which that intuition is exercised were gathered. A more intelligent approach to gematria has been made by Frederick Blickbond and Dr. Thomas Simcox Lee, whose works, though devoted to a study of Greek gematria in the New Testament and in the Coptic Gnostic books, are full of valuable suggestions for the students of alchemy. They say, about the 5th century before Christ, there began to appear in the Syrophoenician center east of the Mediterranean traces of a mode of writing in which the letters of the alphabet serve also the purpose of numerals. Though coming from this center, the origin of the method is not believed to be Phoenician but to be traceable to a more eastern source. From this parent influence, two systems are derived. These are the Greek and the Hebrew. Both systems attained a high degree of development about the 3rd century before Christ. Both languages are constructed with great skill and are evidently the work of highly instructed men animated by a clear purpose. Though compiled from older and far less perfect material, they represent something far more than the natural evolution of the material. They shew system, but they also shew peculiarities, sometimes having the appearance of intention, for which no adequate reason has yet been offered. The alphabets, which are also numerals, exhibit unexplained features, some of which may be described as mysterious. It is scarcely reasonable to suppose that the element of chance has in any appreciable degree entered into their framing, and this is the more unlikely in that there is evidence of a contrary belief among these peoples, who shewed a peculiar reverence for their alphabets, ascribing to each letter its own mystical value, and to the whole a body of symbolic teaching in which the principles of number, sound, and also form, as connected with each letter, all played their part. Preliminary investigation, pages 5 and 6 in the Apostolic Gnosis, volume 1, pages 22-23, they write, We make a very limited use of Roman letters as numbers, but for all ordinary purposes. The Arabic numerals which we employ are used for calculation only and are not associated in our thoughts with words or letters in our language. But if we had been trained as children to add, to subtract, to multiply and divide by means of the letters of our alphabet, how differently shall we regard that alphabet? Instinct, habit, association of long standing would form an inevitable and indissoluble link between the letter and the number. The letters of a word would appear to us as number, and the digits of a number would suggest a word, and so it was at the commencement of our era before the introduction of the Arabic numerals. With the Greeks, this association of letter and number was of the most intimate nature. The coining of words for the representations of preferences in number commenced very early, and much of the tradition is associated with the Pythagorean schools, in which the numbers are often recognizable as conventional symbols of ratio. Terms used in music and in astronomy and chronometry betray a like influence, and those names of divinities, which are symbols of planetary times and seasons, can often be identified by their gematria of number. More than all else, the notion of number symbolism enters into and colors religious nomenclatures. And we have abundant proof from the fathers of the Church that the earliest symbolism of God the Father was of a geometrical nature. Alchemy employs the same system, and the main reason there are so few books on alchemy written in Hebrew is that the great texts are in the Bible itself. Nor are they those of the Old Testament only. The Hermetic doctrine permeates the sacred literature of Christianity as certainly as it runs like a golden thread through the tapestry, strange and often outwardly repellent of the Hebrew scriptures. We must never forget that, after all, the New Testament is not less distinctly Hebrew than the rest of the Bible. It disguises itself a little in its Greek garb, but throughout the Gospels, the Acts, the Epistles, and the Book of Revelation, the thought is Hebraic, even though the words are Greek. We found ourselves unable to accept the idea that the New Testament is a fragmentary corruption of a wisdom teaching now lost. Nor is it possible for one who has sufficient knowledge of Semitic turns of thought to draw any other conclusion from a plethora of the New Testament in the original than that those books are a Hellenized presentation of ideas essentially Hebrew in their immediate origins. However much indebted to all the forms of ageless wisdom the Hebrew thought itself may be. On the other hand, it should also be understood that many currents of the doctrine flow together to make the mighty stream of wisdom presented in the New Testament. The ideas are predominantly, but by no means exclusively, Semitic. What we mean to suggest is that the New Testament is all of a piece with the Old, but this is far from saying that the Bible is not full of doctrine which is more ancient than what appears from the surface. Literal reading of the text. Egypt and Chaldea and Persia and India, perhaps China also, have had their share in making this library of ageless wisdom. Once we know how to penetrate behind the outer veil of words and symbols, we find ourselves in the presence of the same mysteries which are the subject matter of all sacred books. Thus it is that the anonymous authors of the Rosicrucian Manifestos, after plainly intimating that their doctrine is a mixture of Hermetism and Kabbalah, assert that it is also definitely Christian, and that the Bible agrees with it on all points. From this, and from certain writings of the later alchemists, it was inferred by the ingenious author of Remarks upon Alchemy and the Alchemists, General Ethan Allen Hitchcock, that the real object of the great work was no more than moral perfection, and that the complicated symbolism of the true sages was adopted to avoid religious persecution. Those who see alchemy in this light are of the opinion that the Hermetic art is merely a system of spiritual discipline, leading to illumination and regeneration. Others, like Miss Atwood, whose suggestive inquiry is eminently worth revealing, Others, like Miss Atwood, whose suggestive inquiry is eminently worth reading, advance the view that the great work is a psychological process akin to mesmerism, in which the subject of the work is a sensitive who is trained by the operator so as to become clairvoyant. Neither of these notions is correct, but neither is wholly false. Moral discipline is certainly part of the self-training of every alchemist, and that training includes also the application of laws and forces which were made known to the world by the discoveries of Mesmer, Brett, and their successors. The great work, however, is more than self-discipline, more than the exaltation of human consciousness into a state of mystic vision, and very much more than the manipulation of ectoplasm, which one American framer of alchemical theories offered not long since as the true meaning of the alchemical books. The great work is a physical work. It does actually operate on physical substances contained in the bowels of the earth. Here, Hafid has made us speak in improved Hermetic fashion, yet, though there is more in what has just been said than will be discerned by some readers, we hasten to add that the substances an alchemist works with are actually found in their natural state as forms of the physical matter which constitutes the structures of this planet. The laboratory of an alchemist, however, is a hidden laboratory. In the books of genuine adepts, the vessels of the art are invariably called secret. So are the processes. Thus Bernard of Trevisan writes, "Dissolution is the whole mystery of the art, and is to be accomplished not as some have thought, by means of fire, but in a wholly abstruse manner, by the help of mercury." In this quotation, the adjective affrous has the now obsolete meaning concealed, hidden. Thomas Charnock gives a hint to the same effect in this bravery. "I think few potters in this realm have at any time made such cunning ware, as for our science we fashion and prepare. Few indeed, for all that alchemical books abound in pictures of alembics, retorts, and all manners of strange-looking vessels, because in truth, until the stone is made, the only laboratory is the alchemist's own body, and the secret vessels are organs of that body. Alchemy is primarily an interior operation. Yet by no means is it wholly metaphysical. Actual physical materials are worked upon, and the operation has for its object the making of a mineral product, which may truly be called a stone. This stone is a product of art, through the materials composing it are drawn from nature. The great work may be described correctly as being a psycho-physiological transformation, called hermetic, because it is directed by human self-consciousness. As all readers of these pages have learned in the course of their tarot studies, self-consciousness was personified by the Egyptians as Thoth, by the Greeks as Hermes, and by the Romans as Mercury. Thus it becomes evident that what Bernard of Trevisan means by saying the work is performed by the help of Mercury is practically what the Hindu sage we quoted in Lesson 1 had in mind when he said, "It shall be grasped by the mind alone." Dissolution is said to be the whole mystery of alchemy, because the great work enables us to control those functions of our bodies which dissolve, or break down into their constituent elements, the forms of materials taken from our environment. The secret vessels of the alchemist are organs of his own body, together with their etheric and astral counterparts. The great work, then, is really an alchemical operation performed under the direction of a man's self-conscious intelligence. It begins in man's mind, but it is realized by means of changes effected in his physical body. In consequence of these changes, he becomes a new creature, able to exercise powers which are unknown to the average human being. When an alchemist working in his secret laboratory has dissolved the old creature and coagulated the new creature in its place, his physical organism enables him to effect, by means purely mental, transformation in the molecular and atomic structure of the physical substances constituting his environment. Because of the change in himself and the power it places at his disposal, he really can manufacture a physical substance which has remarkable healing properties, and which may be employed for the transmutation of the baser metals into actual gold and silver. His ability to do this, however, is never abused, nor does he go about the world calling attention to his seemingly miraculous powers. To say that a perfected alchemical adept can, and sometimes does, transmute base metals into gold is simply to state a fact. To suppose that such metallic transmutation is the main object of the great work is to be grossly mistaken. The work has a far higher aim.